Well, there are one or two others, but this does remind us that a number of the constituencies that we're seeing tonight are going to be seen for the last time, because there's going to be a massive redistribution of seats, which we might be able to talk about a little later in the night.
And a very quick comment now from the Northern Desk and Harold Webb. Harold?
Well, there you are, the first three Labour seats chalked up in the northwest. The interesting thing about the position in Salford is that in Salford West, the Conservative candidate there, Councillor Clark, made one of the burning issues in the election the whole question of capital punishment. Now, he doesn't seem to have had much effect on the electors, because, in fact, Mr. Orme's majority, there was a swing to him this time of 3.7%. Now, as far as Mr. Orme and Mr. Lorne are concerned, if, as is expected, Mr. Wilson gets a big majority in the 80 or 100 group, and there is a big left wing, then it's pretty certain that both Mr. Orme and Mr. Lorne will be in the centre of that left wing. Cliff?
Yes, nobody Ian wants to make a point.
Just one point worth making, that although we keep on talking about this swing to Labour of 3 or 4%, Labour has still actually got to win the seats. Let's always keep this in our mind. And the ones I think to watch are seats like Exeter, which should be coming quite soon, Billericay coming a bit later, Birmingham Peribah, Hornchurch, Middleton and Prestwich, Oxford, Portsmouth West, Eton and Slough, Haddow East, Southampton Test. These, we think, about these 10 marginal Conservative seats should be coming up within the next hour or perhaps a bit more, and these are the seats which, whatever the swing says, Labour has got to physically win. This is the point.
Every one of the seats we've heard from so far has had a swing above the amount needed to win virtually every one of the seats that Ian Trefowen has just listed.
Now, I'll come back to you again in a moment, David, because you were nodding your head rather sagely when Mr. Enoch Powell was talking about your predictions of last time and the percentages, but we'll come back to you in a moment because we're going to Bob McKenzie.
Well, we've got 7 results in now, and the swing on those, the average swing, is 4.2. We've lurched up as far as 6, we've lurched back as far as 2.8, but it's settling in now on 7 results. It could change, but it's settling in so far around 4.2, which is not very far off the opinion pollsters' 4.5% that was predicted earlier. Let's look now at the state of the parties board. We've naturally now got a 7th result in, and it means that Labour has 4, Conservatives 3, with no seats changing hands so far. And therefore, built into that stable situation is the fact that Labour is doing better at its 4 seats than the Conservatives are in their 3 seats. And the position on the party lead board is naturally Labour lead over Conservative 1, with, as you'll see, no less than 623 to come. The polls have been closed just over an hour and a half.
What I haven't told you so far is that we've got our outside broadcast cameras on either side of Smith Square, one the Conservative central office and one over in Transport House. Let's go now to the Labour Party headquarters and Peter Wood.
And here at Labour Party headquarters, a mood of absolute confidence. The only doubt, can the majority really be as big as the polls are showing? The people here, something of the 120 party workers, that's all they've had throughout this campaign, the cheapest campaign Labour's ever run, because there just wasn't time to have the sort of advertising expenditure there was in the past. And yet the cheapest and perhaps the most successful for many, many years. Yet I've not found a party worker here who's predicting more than 100 majority, and many of the most senior are still saying that the 40 to 70 majority they predicted a month ago, they're still tending to stick with. Here in October 64, a nerve-racked room. This time, the sweet smell of success. Peter Woon, Labour Party headquarters.
Well, David Butler, can we just take up what Peter Woon was saying? These people down in Transport House are not expecting the kind of majority that everyone's saying.
Well, we must wait and see. I've always thought politicians tend to be cautious. I travelled around the whole country during this election, and I found no Labour people really claiming, or very few claiming this sort of movement, no Conservatives thinking that it was happening. But it is the tendency developed over 10 years when we had very little movement of opinion, 10 years of low swings make politicians not expect them. But in the early part of this century, we used to have much bigger swings. And I think we may be having at least a swing comparable to the one we had last time, and perhaps a little bigger tonight.
I think we'll now go down to that great cockpit of opinion down in Trafalgar Square and try and find Alan Wicker. I'm sure he hasn't got one of those hats on, has he?
A quick taste of public opinion here in Trafalgar Square. Now, has the election gone so far the way you thought it would go?
Yes, and the way I hoped it would go.
I see. Do you think a large Labour majority will make any difference to your way of life?
Well, I think we are faced with a decision of whether we're going to live in a dream world like Malta Vitae, the way we did for 13 years under the Tories, or we're going to have a hard, difficult time, but we're going to go from strength to strength.
Do you think it's been an interesting election, this, or have you been bored with it?
Well, it's been an interesting election as far as there have been issues brought up which have only cropped up in recent elections, such as immigration and entry into the common market.
Have you found it interesting?
Yes, I found it very interesting.
But you see, I see you're a Tory as opposed
Yes,
to...
I am a Tory, yes.
Now, what point have you found interesting about the election?
Well, I find it interesting because the result of this will depend will determine the next 5 years' government, and if the Labour get in, they'll make a complete muck of the whole country.
Now, who do you think's going to get in?
Well, I think the Conservatives have got a very good chance of getting in, because in the constituencies I've been working in, they've been quite a long swing over to the Conservatives.
But despite all the public opinion polls...
Yes, despite all the public opinion polls, I think they maybe proved wrong.
I see. Who do you think's going to win, sir?
I think Labour is going to win, sir.
Why do you think that?
Well, because Mr Wilson, he has produced a proper manifesto.
Have you been at all influenced in the way you voted by anything you've read or heard on the television?
Yes, I've been influenced because I think Wilson is a man who intends to do good for the country, and he will.
What influenced you?
Oh, Wilson himself, to be a leader.
In his party broadcasts and his speeches, he influenced you?
Yes, he does.
Have you been influenced at all by anything you've seen or heard or read during the election?
No.
Nothing?
No,
You've got Bill is best here, I see.
Yes, that's for the Recon.
I see. Right. What about you, madam? Did you vote today?
Yes.
Who do you think's going to win?
Well, I don't know. I'm not going to win.
Well, there's a don't know. Alan Wicker, Trafalgar Square.
And back to the result that we saw flash by.
From Solihull, which is in fact a very safe Conservative seat.
But a 3% swing to the Labour Party there in one more new type of seat that we haven't really heard from before. Turnout down, 6% down in Solihull, but a 3% swing. Admittedly, there was a large Liberal vote to be redistributed. 19% of the people voted Liberal last time, and there was no Liberal this time. Still, the average swing on all those 8 results we've had so far is about 4.1.
Manchester Cheetham, Harold Levers held this safe Labour seat with a slightly increased majority.
And a drop in turnout of 10%, but a 13% swing to Labour in Manchester Cheetham. Much the biggest thing we've heard so far, a low electorate, a not very prosperous part of Manchester that's being redeveloped.
And Rossendale, Anthony Greenwood, the Minister for Overseas Development, has held what used to be a fairly marginal seat. Now he seems to have a comfortable majority.
Have you got any kind of prediction out of your computer yet, or when can we really expect one?
120 is the latest figure that the computer has produced in a thoroughgoing way on this. There was, in fact, in Rossendale, where we had the result a moment ago, only a 1.5% swing to Labour. That's the lowest swing to Labour that we've had in any one of the 10 results we've had so far. The turnout was 80%, which is the highest we've had recorded yet in any result, though even that was a bit down on 64.
That was Rossendale, Anthony Greenwood's seat.
Gentleman just now was talking about a manifesto, and I heard that only 6 days before polling day there was a rather unfortunate mix-up at Tottenham because the local paper printed the Conservative manifesto under the heading of Labour and vice versa. How long will it be before we hear from Tottenham to see if it has any effect at all here? Are they early or late, Tom? I can't quite find it on my list.
I can't find them, but I think they're fairly late. It's a fairly safe Labour. They're curious. Tottenham's a curious one because the Labour MP in the previous Parliament, 59-64, crossed the floor of the House.
Oh, yes, so he did. Now, I think this is about the time that we can go across and take a look at Robert McKenzie's key seats, because Ian was mentioning a few early on that we're expecting to come in. But I think, Bob, it's already. Bob?
Well, now, we've heard from a total of 11 seats, and the swings have ranged from a 12.8 to Labour to a 1.5 to Labour, but averaging out, by my calculation, well ahead of the computer, by somewhere around 5% swing to Labour, perhaps 4.5 to 5, and something awfully close to what we predicted when we were talking about this board before. If it stays around there, then this whole range of Tory marginal seats are in danger. All of them in danger, down somewhere to about the 4.5% point that I talked about last time. And it'll still vary, but that's the way it stands at the present time. They're all in danger.
And Exeter is one of those in danger, Ian, isn't it?
Exeter is indeed, but can we just take Bradford East,
Yes,
as we've got there? Safe Labour seat, but a new MP, Frank McLeave is retired, and Edward Lyons, a barrister, now becomes the new Labour MP for Bradford East.
Looks like a 10% swing to Labour, sorry, 8% swing to Labour in Bradford East. There's not on detailed figures yet.
And yes, on Exeter, Cliff, we very need a swing of 1.5% to Labour for the seat to go, and of course we're talking in terms of 3% swing, so Labour should have won Exeter.
That was 7.7% swing in Bradford East, the first Yorkshire seat we've heard from.
Well, that could throw in doubt a number of, possibly Shipley, I think.
Shipley and Pudsey, yes, certainly come into the
go, yes.
range.
And of course the one Bradford seat the Conservatives have got, Bradford West.
Well, any moment at all, I hope that we're going to hear from down there in Exeter. The names to watch.
Yes, the interesting thing about Exeter is that the Labour candidate there is now we're getting another result.
Right.
And it's Hayes and Harlington, which is a very comfortable Labour seat. They've had it for some time, but their majority's up to 2,000. This brings in back to the House Arthur Skeffington, who's the Parliamentary Secretary of the Ministry of Land and Natural Resources. Hayes and Harlington, majority up by 2,000.
Well, I'm told it's a false alarm on Exeter. They're not ready down there yet, which is not very surprising, perhaps.
Well, if it's a close one.
If it's as close as that. Incidentally, in terms of recounts, now, because we're going to hear this throughout the night, I'm sure. Now, who can claim a recount? David, I think you should know about
anyone who can claim a recount. It's up to the town clerk to say yes or no. Normally, I think 200 or 300 is the thing. About 12 seats, when we're all said and done, about 12 seats will end up tonight, today and tomorrow, with a majority of under 300. So there may be something like 15 or 20 recounts all told, I would guess.
But this is all right. But say someone has got... I'm sorry.
Hayes and Harlington figures. Arthur Skeffington, as I say, holds the seat. Parliamentary Secretary, Ministry of Land and Natural Resources, second Minister to be returned.
A 3.2% swing to Labour in this first London suburban seat. Turnout just about the same as last time.
The Speaker is back, not at all surprising. There was the Conservatives and Liberals did not put up against him. There was just one independent candidate at Southampton's Itchin, and the Speaker, you'll find, will have a thumping majority.
He won by a 6-to-1 majority. His opponent did, in fact, just manage to save his deposit, which is not a fate that independents often achieve.
Technically, the Speaker has to be re-elected when the new Parliament meets on April the 19th. There isn't a shadow of a doubt that he will be re-elected. He's very popular and greatly respected.
So in terms of the state of the party board, we now will get our one other. This is the one other that we will be seeing throughout when we look at that state of the party board. That is the Speaker, and don't get any wrong ideas.
Dr. Horace King, the Speaker. Sorry,
15 results in, as you'll see. Labour with 10, doing much better in its 10, however, than the Conservatives are in their 4. Indeed, the swing is still around, by our calculation, 4%, just over 4% to Labour, the others being the Speaker in the last line. The party lead position is now, of course, that Labour lead over the Conservatives by 6. No, however, net gains for Labour yet, but every sign on the swing now in hand, there will be impressive net gains coming soon. 614 results to come. There, Labour's got up by one more as we watched it with our very eyes.
What I was going to ask you, David, what happens if you get the Conservative and the Labour man at the top?
And the one that went up before Bob's very eyes was Accrington. Labour upheld Accrington. In fact, it's a new MP taking over from one who's retired.
And we ought to take a look at Horace King.
Dr. Horace King, this man who took over as Speaker on the death of Sir Harry Hilton Foster last autumn and has made a tremendous impression in the House of Commons. He speeded up question time, no end. Gone very fast, and he's a very likeable man. There he is.
Some people said too fast, didn't they, Ian?
Well,
were you one of them? I don't remember.
Well, I must say they were tied, but he went so fast that I think there was a feeling that it's difficult to get in. But it's now balanced out, and you're getting through far more questions, but I think without losing the cut and thrust and the sort of solid work of question time. I'm sure this is true.
A comment from the North desk.
Well, we've had 6 results in the North at the moment, and of course this was the area in the Northwest where the Conservatives really had to make some impact to get back. Bessie Braddock, incidentally, we've just heard, is back. Now, the average swing in the North at the moment is 4.4% over these 6 seats, and on this basis it means that the Conservatives are going to lose 8 seats. The Speaker may be back, but the Deputy Speaker, Sir Sam Story, will be almost certainly out at Stretford on these figures. So will Mr Julian Amery. York will be lost. Sheffield, Healy will be lost. Bebington, the High Peak Division at Lancaster will be lost. Shipley and Bradford West. Cliff?
Well, it's Ian.
Accrington, results from Harry Hines, retired, a new Labour MP, Arthur Davidson, a barrister, age 37. This has been Labour ever since 45, but it's until now been fairly marginal. David?
The swing is under 1%, which is the lowest swing we've had yet. Accrington and Rossendale are way below the average, 1%, under 2%, but overall the average is still nearer 5 than 4% on the 14 or 15 results we've had in.
But Accrington did have a well above average swing last time. Do you think that these are evening out over the two elections?
I think not. I think the one thing we've got to be very careful about on our results is that the ones where Labour has done best have been the very depopulated urban centre cases with very low electorates, and the swing has been much lower in the large electorate places.
Here's Bessie Braddock's result, Liverpool Exchange. Her majority is up. She's held this seat ever since 1945 and is, of course, a very famous figure in the House of Commons.
Is there any indication how the Liberals are doing in the very few results that we've so far had with a Liberal in?
I think we've only had one result. We've only had Guildford with a Liberal in.
Well, Accrington, they did.
We had Accrington as well.
Yes.
The Liberal was down 1,300 votes there compared to last time, down 3 or 4% compared to last time.
On those two, it's obviously much too early to say, there are signs that where the Liberals running third, perhaps the Liberal vote is peeling off. We've yet to see where the Liberals running second, which is the real test.
But the Liberals do have to wait till tomorrow for most of their comfort. Only 2 of the 10 seats held by the Liberals in the last Parliament are in fact counting tonight.
We should be getting Orpington before too long. I think before midnight, within the next hour, we ought to get Orpington.
At 10:47, let's take a look at the state of the parties.
Here we are then, now 18 seats in, no seats have changed hands. Labour has 13 in, scoring, as we said they would, far more of their results first tonight. But the important thing is the average swing in those seats is just over 4%, pointing to a Labour majority of well over 100, perhaps in the order of 120, 130. Looking now at the party lead board, here let me remind you that Labour should be leading the Conservatives by 70 on the night's results to be sure of forming a new government, or if they're to live up to the figures they've had on the swing board.
And now we're going quickly down to the West Country, to Exeter.
Well, here at Exeter, the Sheriff will make the announcement, and he's standing by now. We've been told that it will be a matter of about, well, seconds now. The poll here today has been very heavy indeed. They predict that it was about 83%, which is 5 or 6% up on the last election.
Ladies and gentlemen, the votes cast at this election are as follows. Dudley Williams, 18,613.
Conservative.
Dunwoody,
Labour.
22,000. Ladies and gentlemen, please, would you mind, please? Dunwoody, 22,189. Thompson, 4,869. And Mrs. Gwyneth Dunwoody is elected member for Exeter.
Well, there's absolute pandemonium here in the Civic Hall at Exeter.
Labour's first game tonight in Exeter, the first time they've ever held Exeter, a 5.5% swing to Labour in this southwestern town. Turnout up, 3%, nearly 84% turnout.
Ian, do tell us about Mrs. Dunwoody.
Yes.
She's a rather interesting...
Mrs. Gwyneth Dunwoody, who has won this seat for Exeter, is the daughter of the late Morgan Phillips, who was for many years the secretary of the Labour Party, a very powerful figure in the Labour movement.
Well, I wonder now if we're ready to go across to our southwest desk, because here we are, our first Labour gain of the night. It comes from the southwest. Are we ready over the southwest?
Yes, we are.
This has been a remarkable victory for the Labour Party in Exeter. When I was down there the other day, even in their best moments, they did not expect to have a swing like this, which is well above what was necessary to take the seat. It's been an interesting campaign because there's been a big question mark over the performance of the Liberal. Mr. Thompson has been very much involved in a local council rent row down there, and it was predicted by impartial observers at the university that he was going to do very well because the tenants were grateful to him for what he'd done for them. But he does seem that he's come down rather badly. I heard predictions from Labour circles of a majority of 50, which of course would have involved a recount and possibly even more. But in fact, Mrs. Dunwoody has swept in with this 5.5 swing to her party. Sir Ralph Dudley-Williams was in some difficulties at the last election. There were suggestions of personal abstentions because he perhaps got out of touch with one or two elements, but the Conservative Party there were quite confident that he had mended his fences and that he was going to do very well indeed. But it must be a considerable disappointment to the local Conservatives in Exeter tonight.
Now, two more results.
I think there's a headline here. There's a result.
What's this one in a bit?
I don't know. Let's wait and see. Where are you? Here.
It's one of the marginals, or... well, we've got the result from Burnley, which the Labour Party have held ever since 1918, except for one brief period. Dan Jones has held the seat ever since 1959.
2% swing to Labour there. Another Lancashire swing well below the average we've been having on the rest of the results, which has been running around 4.4, but here's only 1.9% swing in Burnley.
Have a word about that later. Now, Romford. Ron Ledger held this seat ever since 1955.
2% swing there in Romford, another London suburban one.
It's a seat that Labour's held since 1955 when it was put into this form and redistribution, but at one time it looked quite marginal. Now, we really ought to start talking about the Liberals because Burnley was not a case in point. The Liberal vote fell only slightly, but at Exeter we are seeing for the third successive time, this polarisation, this tendency of when the Liberals are running third. Here's a result from Harrow West.
2.3% swing to Labour in Harrow West. That must jeopardise Commander Colne in Harrow East. Turnout slightly up there, 80%.
Jack Page has held this seat since 1960. He's quite a lively backbencher. The Liberal vote, again, slightly down.
On the three results we've had so far with Liberals in them, the Liberal vote has dropped by 5.6% on average.
Well, with those results in, I think this is just about time. We've already heard from the Labour Party headquarters. I think we can now go down to John Tidmarsh at the Conservative Party headquarters. John?
Well, there's not much to say from Conservative headquarters at the moment. As you might imagine, the results we've had in so far have not been greeted with very great enthusiasm here, particularly the last one we had from Exeter. And I think that among the party workers, you might describe the atmosphere here as one of cautious pessimism. However, there's a long way to go, and there was some comfort drawn here from the words of Mr. Powell, which you saw a little earlier from Wolverhampton, when he was reminding them that 18 months ago, although things started off rather badly for the Conservatives, they did turn around a little bit later on in the night. However, the first official statement we're going to get here is not going to be, I think, for about 15 minutes at least. We are waiting for Mr. Edward Buchanan, the party chairman. He went down to Taunton, his constituency, to vote for himself and presumably to persuade 1 or 2 other people to vote for him as well. And he is, I'm told, flying back. He should have landed by now. And he is due here, well, he was due here at about 11 o'clock. We won't get any official statement until he arrives. But if we're not very cheerful at Conservative headquarters at the moment, at least at the moment, we're all right for hot suppers. John Tidmarsh at Conservative headquarters.
Now let's hear from Wigan even.
Wigan result, this is the seat Labour's held ever since 1910, so I'll certainly hear it tonight with this very big majority.
3.3% swing in Wigan. We've now had 18 results in. The lowest swing has been 1.9% to Labour. The highest has been way up over 10%. But when you've had 18 seats and every one of them has swung to the government in power, you can say without a shadow of doubt that the Labour Party has in fact won this election, and nothing conceivably that could come could change that.
Well, let's now take a look at the state of the parties board.
Well, we've now got 25 results in, and the important thing is Labour has drawn blood at Exeter with 1 gain. This is the beginning of what we anticipate as a big bloodletting operation in the next couple of hours as Labour's figures mount. At the present time, 18 Labour seats in. They must have 260 to form a government. No question whatever, they'll do it. And on present form, a majority of at least 100, perhaps more, perhaps less. On the party lead board, then, the Labour lead over the Conservatives, 12, must be 70 to form a government. Polls close 2 hours. A lot of seats still to come.
Ian, can we have 2 points first of all? We talk about Mrs. Dunwoody, but her husband is standing also down in the West Country.
He's standing at Falmouth and Camborne, which is a seat which became vacant on the death of Mr. Hayman. Here's another result coming up, Keighley. This is a seat which Labour won off the Conservatives the last election, and they've now held it with a comfortably increased majority. And there is the Keighley result. John Binns right off the Conservatives in 64. Conservatives held it just in the 59-64 Parliament, otherwise this is normally a Labour seat.
About 2% swing to Labour in Keighley.
Another of these seats where the Liberals stood in 64 have now withdrawn. Now the Thurrock result, Hugh de Large, very safe Labour seat. He's been there ever since 1950 and he's been a member ever since the war.
2% swing in Thurrock. Turnout down 2%. Overall, the turnout is going to be lower in this election than it was in the last election, despite the greater newness of the register.
A quick comment from Harold Webb.
Well, we've had 3 of the Cotton Town results in already, Rossendale, Accrington and Burnley. And the average swing in these Cotton Towns is far lower than the rest of the country. In fact, it's 1.3%. But this would be sufficient for Mr. Sidney Silverman to win the hanging election in the neighbouring Nelson and Colne constituency, where in fact the Conservatives need a swing to them of 3.5 if they're going to win back that seat. Cliff?
Now the Wickham result, John Hall has held this for the Conservatives with a slightly reduced margin. This used to be a very marginal seat in the early 1950s, but it's less so now.
2% swing there, exactly 2% swing in Wickham.
I think we ought really to be anticipating the first Liberal, and that is Jeremy Thorpe, because I think we should be hearing from Jeremy Thorpe's constituency. Barnstaple are about to declare, I should think.
Devon North should be quite soon. This is the seat that Jeremy Thorpe won in 59, to everybody's astonishment. It was one of the great surprises of the 59 election with a majority of about 360. In 64, he pushed the majority right up to over 5,000. And we saw this polarisation I was talking about working to his advantage, that the Labour vote begins to peel off when the Labour man's running a comfortable third. Labour people tend to start voting Liberal, as it were, to keep the Tory up.
I'll tell you something, Ian. This is the constituency of Devon North, where a local newspaper said I was going to stand for one party or another, till it was denied by Jeremy Thorpe and me and everybody else as well.
I won't ask which one.
So, the declaration from Barnstaple will come from the banks of the Tor and the Torridge. Our reporter down there is Tom Salmon. Tom Salmon is keeping an eye on it and an ear open to see how Jeremy Thorpe is doing. I think now we can usefully go down to Barnstaple and see how close they are to this declaration. Tom Salmon?
Well, in fact, it's David Lomax, Cliff, but never mind. All the ballot boxes from 88 different polling stations arrived here at the Queen's Hall, Barnstaple, well before 10 o'clock. That's 10 minutes earlier than last year. Last year's result came at 11:17. It's obviously going to be much, much earlier this year. North Devon is now more, perhaps, than...
North Devon constituency. The votes cast at this election are as follows. Timothy Carlton Kegwin.
Conservative.
15,631. James Henry Rayner.
Labour.
6127. John Jeremy Thorpe.
Liberal.
16,797. And John Jeremy Thorpe is elected as a member for the North Devon constituency.
So Jeremy Thorpe has held a seat for the Liberals. It's no change in North Devon.
But with a greatly reduced majority, cut from 5,000 to just over 1,000. What's the swing, David?
Well, you can't really use a swing in a seat where the Liberals come first. The swing is just measure between Labour and Conservative. But the Labour Party did save their deposit this time, which they didn't last time. And Jeremy Thorpe no longer gets in with a clear majority, as he did. He got a clear majority of all the votes cast in North Devon in 1964. This must be very bad news for the Liberals in the light of their hopes in other West Country seats, North Cornwall, Torrington, Chippenham, North Devon, North Dorset.
There's the Devon North full result. Jeremy Thorpe's vote is down by over 2,000. The Conservative vote up by nearly 2, the Labour vote up by about 1.5.
And now I can see a familiar face. Here we go. Leyton, Mr. Wilson arriving.
Conquering hero arrives, which he very much is in this part of the world. James Harold Wilson, the Labour candidate for Leyton. Mr. Wilson's been in Liverpool for the last couple of hours. The poll will not be declared here for, I think, another hour. His majority is almost 20,000. He's built it up from under 1,000 just over 10 years ago to this present staggering figure which he reached last time. Scenes of great jubilation. He has with him his father's not in the picture now, but he's there, his father is there, Mrs. Wilson is there, of course, his sister is there with him, and they've been, and son Giles, and they'll soon be going into the hall. John Morgan in Leyton.
And now let's go over to Robert McKenzie.
We've now got 29 results in, and that swing, which was average around 4.1, is now slightly under 4, about 3.8, but still on present form, pointing to a good Labour majority of over 100, perhaps as high as 125, in that vicinity. Let's look now at the State of the Parties board, which will show how these have been divided up so far. We're still on...
Now let's take a quick look at the State of the Parties board.
There you'll see, with these 29-30 results in, that Labour has gained one, Exeter, of course, but Labour is doing much better in its 20 seats than the Tories are in their 8. Labour's lead on the party lead board is now standing at 12. They need to make that 70 to be sure of forming a government, and of course there's no question whatever now, Labour will form a government. It will have a majority of probably in the vicinity of 100, bit more, bit less.
Results from the cities of London and Westminster, obviously one of the most safe Conservative seats in the country. John Smith, who took this over at the by-election caused by the death of Sir Harry Hilton Foster, holds it.
We can't really use a swing figure here because Sir Harry Hilton Foster wasn't standing as a Conservative.
And now let's go across to Robin Day, and we take up that Exeter gain with Robin.
Good evening, Mrs. Dunwoody. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you wonderfully.
I'm sorry to keep you waiting, but there's quite a lot going on.
Oh, it's quite all right tonight. We're quite delighted to wait.
Why did you do so well? Was it your charm, or the excellence of the Labour case, or the inadequacy of the Conservatives?
Oh, well, we have no doubt about it at all. We were determined that Exeter was going to be represented in Harold Wilson's government because we feel that it's been long overdue here, and we're determined that we're going to be heard in Westminster from now on.
You describe yourself as a housewife, do you?
Well, I think so.
By occupation? Or
yes.
And your husband is a candidate also?
Yes, that's right.
We don't have his results yet, but he's likely to get in, isn't he?
Oh, yes, I should hope so. We must have the master there.
And how are you going to manage two MPs in the same household? Who will wear the trousers?
Oh, the boss. I mean, the boss always does. You know, I lead from the rear.
What do you think the effect of a large majority is going to be on the Labour Party in Parliament? Do you think it'll mean a swing to the left?
Well, all I can say to you is the effect of a really large majority will be that Harold Wilson will get on with the job that he started tremendously well and really carry it through to successful conclusion. Now, you just watch us and you'll see.
Could I wonder if I could have a word with your mother, whom I see on the
yes,
on the left there, Lady
Phillips.
Phillips.
Have a word, but if you hang on while I pass this infernal gadget, will you? Can you hear for this horrible thing?
Good evening, Lady Phillips.
Oh, hello, Robin.
How do you like it? Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
What do you feel like your daughter getting into Parliament?
Well, I wouldn't like to live through the last 2 hours again, I can tell you that. But I do know that she's going to make a first-class job of it.
This would have been
And she's got a wonderful group here, you know. These people really deserve good representation.
This would have been a proud moment for Morgan, wouldn't it?
It would indeed, yes. And we hope tomorrow that John's going to complete the trio, so that I should think between us we can deal with almost any problem that somebody sends.
Will you forgive me if I leave you now, because we've got other places almost as important as Exeter to deal with?
Yes, we don't feel any other.
Goodbye.
Of course. Goodbye.
I can well understand them too. Now what do we do? Take a result, I think, Ian. Oh, no, the Chief Whip is back.
This is the government Chief Whip, Ted Short, who's held his very safe seat of Newcastle on Tyne Central.
The majority is up by 1,000, it says.
A relatively low swing in Newcastle, the first northeastern seat. Here's Warrington with a 6% swing in this Lancashire town. A 6% swing to Labour, turnout slightly down.
And the Liberal vote slightly down. Torquay,
There the Liberals dropped to third place. They were in second place, Hugo Bronner.
Sir Frederick Bennett holds the seat for the Conservatives, but this means the Liberals seem to be dropping votes pretty consistently right round the board. London, Hammersmith North, Frank Tomley holds the seat. Mr. Wilson made one of his last campaign speeches there. Increased majority for Frank Tomley. He's been there ever since 1950.
About a 5% swing there, I think, in our first London seat.
And Crewe, Schofield Allen holds the seat for Labour. The great railway town of Crewe, increased majority. Up by about getting on 3,000. The Manchester Ardwick results, another result from Manchester, and the other Lever, Leslie Lever, has held this seat. It's usually a pretty safe seat for Labour.
3.5% swing, and there was a fascist or union movement candidate standing there who lost his deposit.
Well, so far then we've had one Labour gain, pretty consistent swing. It's beginning to settle down. Labour's gained Exeter. On this question of the seats won and lost, one thing we've got to watch as the night goes on, it looks as if 50 or 60 seats are going to change hands. In other words, we're going to have 50 or 60 new Labour MPs, and the Conservatives are going to lose 50 or 60, and this could affect the balance inside the parties. This is something that Robin Day asked Mrs. Dunwoody, what effect that she thought a big majority, whether it would increase the left wing. Here's the result from St Helens. Mr. Spriggs, who's represented St Helens ever since 1958. Big industrial constituency which has always clocks up majorities for Labour of 17,000 or over.
3.8% swing there. Lancashire is edging up towards the national average swing, but is still, almost all Lancashire results have been below.
Another of these rock-solid Labour seats from the other side of the Pennines, Rotherham. Brian O'Malley, who's an assistant government whips, held it, increased majority.
3.2% swing there, and in Newcastle-on-Tyne Central, a 5.6% swing to Labour.
That's Edward Short, the government chief whip, who had to bear so much of the brunt of operating for 17 months with a majority of over 3. It put a tremendous strain on any chief whip, and he managed, as you know, with just 2 defeats on the finance bill last year, doing all those tremendous battles.
Well, it's 7 minutes past 11 with the results declared 42. I think this is about the time to go to the State of the Party Sport.
On those 42 results, only one has changed hands. You'll notice that's Labour's gain at Exeter, which we were hearing talked about a moment ago. But remember, the key fact is that Labour is doing better at its 29. The Conservatives are in their 11. Labour needs to get that up to 260 on the night's results in order to be sure of forming a government. Looking now at the party lead board, Labour is now 18 seats ahead of the Conservatives, have got to get it up to 70 to be sure of forming a government, as they will certainly do. I'll be surprised if it isn't around 125 when we knock off for the night. 42 results in, 5:88 to come, polls closed just over 2 hours ago.
Well, the result I learned soon to come from Smethwick. Desmond Wilcox.
For 10, or they'll clash with Leyton. Right, we're about ready for the result here at Smethwick. I gather within the next 2 or 3 minutes, the returning officer, Alderman Ninian Neven, who is the Conservative Mayor of Smethwick for just about another 50 minutes, will in fact be coming out with the result. This, in fact, also is his last official act as Mayor of Smethwick. Counting here finished about 10 minutes ago, as far as I know. It was over very quickly. Poll was about the same that it was in the 64 election, about 74% as far as we can tell. Of course, they're not releasing the figures as yet. All the candidates are in. Bearded Andrew Foulds, known to probably more children on television than he is.
I think what we'll do is we'll leave Smethwick and go back there when they're really ready. Alice Bacon is back.
Alice Bacon's back in Leeds, the Minister of State for the Home Office, and now we've got details from Tunbridge. Interesting result here. Richard Hornby, the Conservative, ran into some trouble with his local party because of his support for the Labour government's policy on Rhodesia. Doesn't seem greatly to have affected his majority.
1.8% swing in Tunbridge. Turnout there down in, I think, our first Kent seat to report.
Liverpool, Scotland. Now a very safe Labour seat. Walter Aldrich holds it for Labour.
Conservative, a swing of 3.8 in that very safe Labour seat. Turnout down 51.7, almost
a record low. Farnworth, Ernest Thornton, Parliamentary Secretary to the Ministry of Labour, a cotton worker, unionist. He's held the seat with an increased majority. This is a safe Labour seat. The first seat from Northern Ireland, down north. Sir George Curry holds this rock-solid Ulster Unionist seat. St Patrick was buried here.
Turnout was only 48%. Less than half the voters in North Down actually managed to vote.
And now let's go across to our southeast desk.
Yes, in the southeast we've had very few seats and we've not been in the picture very much so far. But it is possible to say that whereas in '64 the swing in the southeast was generally bigger than the national average, there are quite a few results which point to it being considerably lower this time. The one that was mentioned by Ian Trefowen just now, that is Tunbridge, only a swing of 1.8 to Labour, where perhaps considering the local Conservative row over Richard Hornby and his support of the government's Rhodesia policy, it might have been more. But the average swing in the southeast seems to average out at something like 2.5 against a national average of 3.8. This means that far...
And now we are going to Smethwick. They're ready to declare.
This is the returning officer, Alderman Ninian Niven. Well, it very much looks as if Andrew Foulds has won the seat back for Labour. The returning officer can't even get a word in edgeways at the moment. They're booing Peter Griffiths, who's been the member for the last 18 months. They're cheering Andrew Foulds. All Foulds' rosetted supporters have got their thumbs in the air. His wife and daughter are beaming all over their face, and nobody's said anything yet. And now the chanting started. At the last election, there was a riot here after the declaration. It looks as if there might be one here before.
Parliamentary election, Smethwick Borough Constituency, 31st of March 1966. I, the undersigned, being the returning officer for the constituency above mentioned, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election was as follows. Foulds Andrew Matthew William.
Labour.
18,440. Griffiths Peter Harry Steve. 14,950. Stanley Roy, 508.
British National Party.
And that the undermentioned person has been duly elected to serve as member for the said constituency. Andrew Matthew William Foulds.
So Smethwick have gone Labour again, a Labour again. The constituency which rejected Patrick Gordon Walker and took Peter Griffiths on race issues in a bitter campaign last time has now gone Labour again. People on the floor.
And
now a flood of gains.
Humphrey Berkeley, beaten at Lancaster, the most surprising Conservative loss so far.
6% swing there, one of the big swings in a seat changing hands.
Question must arise whether Humphrey Berkeley's rather liberal views were too much for some of his Conservative supporters. Southampton Test, another Labour gain, bound to go under any sort of Labour swing. Conservatives held it by a very tiny margin.
Only 2.7 swing there.
Sir John Fletcher Cook loses that seat for the Conservatives. Barons Court, another of these rush results that we're putting through on this new electronic system. Ivor Richards won the seat for Labour in '64, now holds it comfortably.
3.6% swing in that in the London seat we've got.
And we have in fact been told of a third Labour gain, and they all suddenly came true. It's as if the dam has suddenly burst. They've also gained Hornchurch. They've now gained 4 or 5.
We haven't had the figures, actually.
We haven't had the figures from Hornchurch yet. Now they were coming through, but we saw the headline go through.
Yes, this is what happened.
Now, Bradford North. This is a seat which Labour won off the Conservatives in '64, and as you see, they've held it by a comfortable majority.
3.7 swing there.
Ben Ford won this off '64. There's Alice Bacon's result, Leeds South East, Minister of State at the Home Office. He's been a member for Leeds ever since 1945.
4.2% swing there.
And one of the smallest seats in the country, Birmingham, in fact, the smallest seat in England, Birmingham Ladywood. Victor Yates holds it for Labour.
A very remarkable result, that. The Liberal comes second. Wallace Lawler, a sort of notable local councillor who has had a very remarkable local record, has pushed the Conservatives to the 3rd place.
Warwick and Leamington, Anthony Eden's old seat, held for Conservatives by Sir John Hobson, the former Attorney General. Former Attorney General Sir John Hobson.
And a quick one for you,
Manchester Blakely. Paul Rose, who won this seat for Labour in '64, has held it with a greatly increased majority. Majority's up by about 5,000, David.
I'm sorry, I wasn't with you.
Manchester Blakely, the Labour majority up by about 5,000.
6% swing to Labour in Manchester Blakely.
Well, all these swings now, it's time, I think, to go to Ralph McKenzie at the swingometer.
Well, as near as we can make out now, with 69 results in, the swing is somewhere just under 4%. Pointing to a very comfortable Labour win, perhaps 120 majority. Could vary, but it's still very much in that range, well over 100, not quite 130. Now, let's look at the state of the parties board, which is changing every minute now. 70 results in, 4 seats, 4 gains. Indeed, I think a 5th gain has come in since that went up. And those 5 gains, they should be now, are Exeter, Hornchurch, Southampton Test, Smethwick and Lancaster. Changing every second now, as you can see. Labour's lead on the party lead board is now 29. They needed only to have a 70 lead, which they're clearly going to have very comfortably to be sure of forming a government. 72 results in, leads up to 30 as you watch it. 18 minutes, 2 hours and 18 minutes after the polls closed.
We've got some more results in here for you.
Another minister home, Barbara Castle of Blackburn. Barbara Castle, the new Minister of Transport, took over just after Christmas. With a slightly increased majority. But very slightly.
Very slightly indeed. But we've got some ministers back.
500. Now Barnsley, another minister, Roy Mason, Minister of State Board of Trade, in effect the Minister of Shipping.
Not a very significant one, but the lowest swing to Labour so far tonight. Only 0.7 swing to Labour in Barnsley.
In the South Yorkshire Coalfield, you weigh the Labour votes by the ton. Now, Manchester Moss side, held by the Conservatives with a greatly reduced majority by Frank Taylor.
4.6% swing there. Turnout just the same as last time.
Derby South, Philip Noel Baker, Labour veteran, Nobel Peace Prize winner, holds the seat with an increased majority.
5.2% swing there.
Jimmy Thomas's old seat. Now, London Paddington South, and a new Conservative MP. This was Bobby Allen's seat. He retired at the end of the last Parliament. Now, Nicholas Scott holds the seat for the Conservatives with a reduced majority.
5% swing there.
And the details of Smethwick.
8.3% swing to Labour in Smethwick. Turnout just fractionally up on last time. But Labour is in handsomely, an 8.3% swing, which puts them just above their position in 1959. They've more than recouped the loss when Patrick Owen Walker went down in '64.
Wood Green, Joyce Butler, Mrs. Joyce Butler holds the seat for Labour. This is the Alexandra Palace constituency.
4.2% swing to Labour there.
Newcastle on Tyne North. The a normally safe Conservative seat. Mr. Elliott holds it, but with a reduced majority.
6.5% swing there, very high. And we haven't been talking about this, one more lost Liberal deposit.
But
every Liberal vote so far has been down.
But the Liberal was standing there for the first time for many years. Now, Derby North, and another minister back, Neil McDermott.
Only 2.7% swing there.
Financial Secretary to the Treasury. And Manchester Gorton, Conne Ziliakis of the Labour left wing, holds the seat.
With a 5% swing to Labour there.
Manchester, they've had that. Now Bath. Sir Edward Brown, Ted Brown, holds the seat, but only just for the Conservatives.
3.3% swing in Bath.
His majority is well down, from over 5,000 down to just under 800. He's one of the Conservative trade unionists. Crosby, Mr. Page, Graham Page, who is the great champion of the pedestrians, also front-page spokesman on housing and land.
4.2% swing there.
Majority down. Liverpool, Kirkdale, this is one of the seats which Labour won in the 64 election, and which they have held with an increased majority. James Dunn, one of the several bearded MPs we seem to have acquired in the last Parliament. Lincoln,
another one with Andrew Folds now.
And now you've got another one, yes. Lincoln, Dick Taverne has held the seat with an increased majority.
But not much increase, a rather more stable picture in Lincoln.
But Lincoln normally is rather stable, isn't it? Now, the Leyton result. Will Howe has held this seat for Labour. This is a seat, remember, there was a famous by-election in the 59-64 Parliament when Mr. Howe won it on the resignation and retirement to other activities of Charles Hill.
But I think there's a slight swing to the Conservatives there. Let's wait for the figures.
There's a replay there. Now we have Dewsbury. Another of these very safe Labour seats.
5.3% swing to Labour there.
David Ginsburg, who's a former Labour backroom boy, must be in line for a job in the government. Stockport North, one of our rush results just come in. This is a seat which Labour won in 64 off the Conservatives, and as you can see, they have held it. Arnold Gregory has held this one for Labour.
But a low swing.
Now, Liverpool Edge Hill. Mr. Irvine, one of the very tall, lanky MP, has held it for Labour. Sorry to see in the tapes earlier today that Mr. Irvine has been taken to hospital today.
4.1% swing in Edge Hill. Turnout down 5% there in Liverpool.
Now, Hastings,
now we're going to Nelson and Colne for the declaration at Nelson and Colne.
As follows. Davis,
Conservative.
13,829. Downey,
Independent.
Patrick, John, 5,117. Silverman, Samuel,
Labour.
Sydney, 18,406. And Samuel, Sydney, Silverman is elected as member for Nelson and Colne.
So Mr. Silverman is in with a considerably increased majority.
Considerably increased majority, but it's an extraordinary result because Mr. Downey, who, as I think they were saying earlier on the regional desk, was standing purely on the hanging issue, picked up over 5,000 votes, which is an astonishing figure for an independent.
Only a 1% swing to Labour. It certainly cut down the swing, but Mr. Silverman is still in with an adequate margin. After all, it was a seat that's been held by Labour ever since 1935.
Yes. But it has from time to time looked quite marginal, but the surprising thing is that Mr. Downey did pull in over 5,000 votes on the hanging issue.
We have now a computer prediction, 125 majority for Labour over all parties.
Right.
We've got some more results
some
now.
more, I think, coming in. Here's the Nelson and Colne one.
Here's a full Nelson and Colne figure. Sidney Silverman, this veteran who has crowned his career in this last short Parliament by pushing through successfully a bill to abolish capital punishment. And then this extraordinary thing of him being challenged on this very issue in his election, but as you can see, he succeeded.
I was a little misleading there. The swing, in fact, to Labour was 2.6% of the vote. But the independent got 13.7% of the vote and saved his deposit, which is not a thing that many independents managed to do.
Ashton-under-Lyne, usually a safe Labour seat. Robert Sheldon, who became the Labour MP in 64, has held it with an increased majority.
4.2% swing.
And now the Hastings result, which I was going to take a moment ago. Sir Neil Cooper Key has held this seat for the Conservatives, but with a reduced majority. The majority has been cut.
4.3% swing to Labour. It almost becomes a marginal.
Liberal vote held up there. Manchester Openshaw. This has been Labour ever since it was created in 1955. Charles Morris, an assistant whip, held it with an increased majority.
5% swing to Labour. Slightly reduced communist votes, lost communist deposits.
And another minister back, Kenneth Robinson, the Minister of Health. But we've got a more interesting result. Sir Anthony Mayer, who has won Eton and Slough right against the national swing in the 64 election, but is poised on a tiny majority of 10. We are due clearly for his results at any moment, and this must be it. Labour gain, Eton and Slough. Well, with any sort of a Labour swing, this ought to have gone. It was a seat which Sir Anthony Mayer won off Fenner Brockway. Immigration was an issue, no doubt, in this contest. There are the full figures. Joan Lester has won it with a very big majority.
5% swing about, I think.
Labour will be pleased to get this back. I think one must say, in fairness to Sir Anthony Mayer, that although immigration was an issue when he won it.
Had you, in fact, taken Holborn and St Pancras South?
Let's now have Holborn and St Pancras... just St Pancras North. Holborn and St Pancras South. Lena Jager, who won this seat off Geoffrey Johnson Smith, won it back at the last election. Now you've got another rush result.
4.8% swing there.
Another rush result for Watford. We've rushed this one because it's a Labour marginal. It's one that Labour took back off the Conservatives in 64. John Freeman's own seat, he held it in the 45-51 era. But Raphael Tuck has held it pretty comfortably. Now, London St Pancras North, and this is Kenneth Robinson, the Minister of Health.
3.4% swing there.
Darwin, and this is the other Fletcher Cook, the brother of Sir John Fletcher Cook, who had the Darwin result. This is Charles Fletcher Cook, a former junior minister, has held Darwin. His brother, Sir John Fletcher Cook, lost Southampton Test.
3.1% swing. That's one of the seats that could have gone if the national average swing had applied there.
Here's another minister, a very controversial one. Frank Cousins has held Nuneaton. Majority of 11,000.
Back roughly to 1964 level, a great improvement on his by-election when the Labour majority slumped to 5,000.
Remember, that was the by-election which was taken at the same time as the Patrick Gordon Walker's by-election in Leyton.
But compared to the general election in 1964, there was actually a swing to the Conservatives in Nuneaton. It was the first clear swing to the Conservatives we've had in any seat, comparing the result now with the result in 64.
Frank Cousins, the Minister of Technology. Northampton. Reginald Paget has held a seat for Labour.
3% swing to Labour in Northampton. Turnout there down as it is in most seats.
Highly independent Labour backbencher, crusty but effective, Gillingham. One of the Kent seats, Conservatives. Freddie Burton has held this with a reduced majority.
3.3% swing.
Gillingham. Now Stockport South, Maurice Orbach has held this for Labour. This is another seat which Labour gained off the Conservatives at the 64 election, although Maurice Orbach, in fact, is an MP of much longer standing. He was in the post-war Parliament.
Like the other Stockport seat, a rather low swing, just under 2%.
Bermondsey, Bob Mellish, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing, holds this very safe Labour seat.
But a very low swing there, 1.3.
Eccles, Mr. Carter Jones, Labour, holds this seat for Labour.
3.7 swing.
Hartlepool, now that Labour won back at 64 and has been held by Ted Ledbetter, one of their most fiery speakers, with an increased majority.
Very big swing there, 6.4.
Southport, safe Conservative territory. Ian Percival holds this for the Conservatives.
2.5% swing. Liberals down 3.3 in a seat that has been a fairly strong Liberal constituency, but they go down below 20% there.
And can we take Kingston on Thames?
You've got there and one.
John Boyd Carpenter, the front bench Conservative, former Cabinet Minister, front bench Conservative spokesman on housing, has held the seat, but this is very safe Conservative territory.
2.5% swing to Labour, Liberals down 2% there.
I've just been told of another Labour game, but one that was certain to go, Walthamstow East. Labour has won Walthamstow East, but this was a seat that the Conservatives held on a very small majority. There are the figures. John Harvey has now lost his seat, and Mr. William Robinson, a solicitor who fought it last time, has won it with a comfortable majority.
About an average swing there.
That's more than so easy. Another Labour gain on this electronic rush caption that we're showing you.
And now we're quickly going down to Leyton, where I think they're about to declare. Leyton.
And here at Leyton, here comes the result, is Mr. Patrick Gordon-Walker, Mr. Wilson's first Foreign Secretary. Is his long agony over? Has he won here tonight, and will he be back in Parliament? The result at Leyton.
Ladies and gentlemen, the votes cast at this election are as follows. Buxton, Ronald Carlyle, 18,157. Gordon Walker,
Labour.
Patrick Christian, 26,803.
Gordon Walker's back. Patrick Gordon Walker has won Labour.
Hanley, William Reginald, 441.
Independent Labour Party.
And Mackay, Alistair Hector, 3,851.
Liberal.
And Patrick Christian's Gordon Walker is elected as the member for the Leyton constituency.